Got a doozy of a podcast today for you. We're welcoming Matt Bowers, previously of Zapier and also Zillow. Matt is a SEO consultant now, having spent 10 plus years at both of those organizations. Really well known, respected, not only for what they do, but for the SEO strategy. And Matt's behind a lot of that. In particular, Zapier was super well known for the programmatic strategy and Zillow as well. So we thought no better person to come on and talk to us about the ins and outs of that. Ask them questions like how many pages, like what should your rollout strategy be? What are common mistakes? How much unique content you need on these pages? And all the different things he's now bringing to his clients on the program. We were in a somewhat unique setup in Bend, Oregon, nearby where Matt lives. And because of that, we were in a podcast studio that was kind of a little makeshift, but overall the quality of the podcast is good. But just a note on that in terms of like the video setup and the very small occasional audio issues that came from that. So enjoy the conversation. So there's a lot of different questions that kind of spurned from that. Obviously, the fact it's hot right now, a lot of people talking about it. One of the many questions that I have, we can go a lot of different directions, but as someone who's done this several times, done it very successfully, a thought process I have about these pages, obviously you can hit a publish button and suddenly have thousands upon thousands of pages. How unique those pages are sometimes up for debate. Do you think there's kind of a certain threshold, or like, do you say you got to have, like when I was starting SEO, everyone was like, you got to have 300 words of copy on your page. Do you think that's true? What's your thought process?
Well, I'm going to say it depends every time you ask me a question, but I don't think you do. Okay. I think you need enough content on the page for Google to know what the page is about. But it really depends on the industry you're in. Real estate's weird. There's no such thing as unique content, and it's like a syndicated data feed that Redfin and Zillow and Realtor, they all have the same thing. And so, like, what are you going to make about 123 Main Street that's different than your competitors? Basically nothing, or it would be really expensive. You could use AI to augment it and write a bunch of copy, but would it help Google understand that that was about 123 Main Street? Probably not. And so what you end up seeing in the real estate industry is they're all identical. And an upstart that makes a really unique page doesn't get in there. And so like that would be like an extreme example of it not working. On the other hand, I think it can help you get indexed. Like if you're struggling, like Google thinks all your pages are the same, then copy helps you get indexed sometimes. Like it makes it unique enough amongst its peers that Google's like, okay, well, this isn't a waste of space.
It makes sense. And I think of the Trila and Zillows of the world. What is their real estate value score called?
Like the Zestimate?
Zestimate.
Yeah.
Did they also buy the rights to the walk score? Or am I thinking of someone else?
For years, I don't know if it's still on there, but for years, Zillow was licensing walk score numbers. So it was like a third-party deal.
And those were, I don't know, there are additional page elements, like Zillow could make an argument. Obviously, Redfin has its own version of that value data is that unique piece of that page. Were there other variants of that?
Yeah, you can do all sorts of things like deriving new data out of pre-existing data that everybody has. Like the Zestimate is just a newly derived data point, right? And it becomes unique content.
Yeah.
But it's
amalgamation.
It's a data, like it's a string of numbers. Like I just don't think of it as being unique content. But I would say it's like a value add for sure for the user. But for Google, I think putting Zestimate and a dollar sign and some numbers after it, I don't think Google's like, oh, we should rank that all of a sudden. Like it was really good for brand. It was really good for UX. People would come back and revisit, and all those things play nicely into the algorithm, moving us up the rankings. But if we were to say, like let's say we were able to like label a living room now using AI vision. Actually, I think they can do this.
Yeah. Room tours and stuff.
Room tours, living room. Like that's nice, unique content. Does Google take the living room alt tag from our image and all of a sudden that's unique content and help? I don't know, but I think it's great for the user, and that makes rankings go up usually.
So just saying this back to you, is it correct that really if you can deliver a great user experience independent of unique words on the page, it does not matter?
think it matters a lot less than it used to a long time ago. I would say if you make killer UX and tell Google about it and like get some brand following, eventually Google picks up on that these days. But where like writing 10,000 extra words on the page, maybe it helps you a little bit, but you could rank without it as well.
Most realistically, in the scenario you talked about, probably adds almost zero value. It's hard to add value.
Yeah, if you imagine like the classic Zillow landing page, or picture any landing page on the web, and all the stuff that's good for users about it, especially programmatic stuff. It's usually like interacting with the product, or it's like product features, or it's a table or graph or whatever. That's what the user wants to see.
Right.
If you threw 10,000 words of great copy below it, no one would ever see it. Maybe it would help Google understand that the page was about something, but you couldn't do that at scale anyway.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think these pages have gotten better over time, but maybe I'm remembering correctly. I'm sure some real estate company did this, of like, it could be Austin real estate prices or real estate listings. You'd have the listings pages, and then buried after they've gone through the whole inventory is just copy at the bottom. That's not doing anything for you.
I mean, I think Zillow and Trulia and Redfin pioneered that stuff in like 2011. Yeah. I don't think it's doing much anymore. What it might do is help you like make your page unique enough that Google indexes it, but I don't think it helps you rank. It's like that nuance.
Yes, that makes sense.
Like, it's really hard for Google to tell the difference between Austin, Texas and Austin, Colorado or whatever. And so not really. Those are bad examples, but for some pages it's true. Like, or like you'll have these overlapping names that are just so close together that Google can't tell the difference. And so the extra copy will make it so that one of them doesn't just get canonicalized to the other one.
Okay, makes sense.
But like, I would never say as like a client, I wouldn't be like, okay, we got to invest in really great copy across all these pages.
At the bottom of it.
What I might say is like at the very top, we need like 2 extra sentences, but I want it to be something we can show to users.
That adds value. Yeah.
Because if you have this like bar of showing it to users, then it's all of a sudden it's going to be good. It has to be good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you can't get past that bar, you wouldn't do it anymore.
Makes sense. I've seen that on e-commerce pages, and I agree with that, where the common playbook in e-commerce had been shitty copy on the bottom of the page, of the category page. But I saw more and more people add a sentence or two, maybe next to the H1 at the top, that's kind of in the brand voice. I want to say Redbubble. It might not be there presently as we're talking, but I agree with that.
I won't say it doesn't work either, but it's not like it wouldn't be like a go-to strategy just because it seems expensive and doesn't add a ton of value for users. But you could probably find a situation where like, we've got to figure out how to get these pages.
Yeah. I think that's a super important point you just made there. And we had some conversations about this previously prior to recording at lunch. Like, there's probably a lot of SEO things that, I mean, I would bet, and this is maybe this is where this e-commerce thing comes from. You put a ton of copy on 1,000 pages on the bottom, you're going to see some kind of lift. Is that the best use of money and time and effort and resources? Sounds like no, generally.
If you've got if you've got all your eggs in the SEO basket, then I guess you could argue that. But like, let's run some A/B tests to make the experience better. Let's find a way to like get better product photos. At one point, we had a fun time. It's funny. I thought we were going to talk about Zapier, but here I am going on about Zillow. At one point, we hired high school kids to just walk around Seattle and take pictures of the fronts of people's houses, just like from the road, the way that Google Street View does.
Yeah.
But Google Street View's quality is pretty low and like super wide angle and blah blah. So we had like nice cameras, and we were just putting those as like the headline photos on houses that weren't even for sale, just to like find out what would happen for, like, could we get users to claim their home? Did people stay on the page longer? All this stuff.
Was the answer yes?
The answer was yes. The answer was it's more expensive than it was worth, but
there you go.
Like, metrics look nice on those things. It's like, if you can find a way to scale them, it's
the more difficult part.
It's really hard, but I'm all about, I just preach user experience all the time. like, well, I'll tell a story. Like 7 years ago, ex Googler told me about good clicks and bad clicks. Good clicks, it's like we call them pogo sticking, we call it whatever. Good clicks are a click that comes to your website from Google with a certain query string and then sticks around for a certain amount of time. And a bad click would be if they left and they went to a competitor by hitting the back button or whatever. And then, for that query, each URL gets scored and they can adjust your rankings based on your good click, bad click score. So then
Right.
Mike and Rand published their thing 5 weeks ago, whenever it was, kind of the big release of the algo leak, much debated algo leak. And sure enough, one of the API, one of the API endpoints is good clicks and bad clicks. And I was like, no way. It's the thing that I've been chasing for years. So,
I know we all called it pogo sticking, but maybe, now I feel like this officially should reframe it as good click.
I think it would be fun if our podcast made the SEO industry call it good clicks and bad.
Yeah, I could maybe get that in the headline where you can see.
Get a phone call from my
your old boss. Yeah, but it'll be fine.
Yeah, so that was like very instrumental in like the way I view tons of programmatic SEO is like, well, we can keep optimizing for keyword, but really like we need to get them indexed. We need to make a killer brand so that Google does want to rank us, because honestly that's a huge factor these days. Unfortunately for most people, it's really hard to make a brand.
Yeah.
But at a company like Zillow, it's like the brand part is done, at least as of 2013, 2014. The branding was
It's a brand.
very well recognized. And so then it's like, well, now in order to move up rankings, we got to get a good click rating higher.
Makes sense.
So we spend a ton of time working on that.
So there are 2 points that I think kind of tie in today, interestingly, for people. And I know you're helping more startups. One, you made a comment on indexation. I've heard more recently indexation as a little more and seen a little more harder to come by on average. Like Google doesn't want to be spending as much money on crawling the web. Maybe they're cutting that down. And the second part is you touched on a lot of points about brand. So it's like programmatic, something a brand new startup should do. I mean, obviously if they're in real estate, they have to, but maybe you get what I'm saying. Like if programmatic is a potential playbook, but it's not like the absolute playbook, should they do it early before pre-brand?
I think that if you can make the programmatic reflect your product, then it's a really, really nice time to do it. So picture Zapier. They've got the case study. I don't even need to go through it, but it's like all these integrations. They integrate with Slack and Google Sheets and whatever.
Yeah.
And they've got a few hundred of them. I'm like, well, if we check at the keyword, people are searching for how to connect Slack to Google Sheets. So we'll just multiply them together and make a landing page for all of them. It's just a template. All of a sudden they had 4,000 pages from 200 services that can combined. And then every time they add a new service, it makes 200 new pages that can connect to. So it's like now they're up to 6,000, 36 million total pages. Pretty awesome. Most of them don't connect, like Salesforce and Pinterest. Like that really never needs to be done. But for the ones that do like get used, it's really useful. So if you have a situation like that where you're like, our product can be represented, like each use case of our product can be represented with its own landing page for programmatic, I would say do it the day after you finish building your product. Like once you finish your V1 of your product, like let's go, because you can now tell a customer that very specific job to be done is like ready to be done.
And that's what we were talking about, referencing the very smart SEO Eli Schwartz before the call recording.
He's got a whole book about this.
Yeah, exactly. And so is that the delineation? It needs to be product led rather than like we're sort of finding that tangential connection to our business that maybe will drive qualified audience, but I can't tie my product into it. Does that make sense?
I think it just makes it really clear that you're ready to go. Like if it's just
okay.
that, like it's 100%. Let's do it. You don't have to. I mean, you can
hesitant. Yeah.
If you're a founder, like you don't need the strategy doc. You can visualize it in your mind. Then you're like, let's just make these programmatic pages. Whereas, what's a good example? Something like if Coinbase or whatever like does crypto and made a page where it was like transfer every single coin to every other coin, which I think they probably have, to be honest.
Yeah.
But they like convert Bitcoin to Ethereum. Great. They can do that. But convert Bitcoin to some like random meme coin that just got invented yesterday. They probably don't have the ability to connect those two things and actually transact them. They don't need to build that system because it doesn't, like, they could get a ton of traffic for it because they're Coinbase and they're a really big crypto company. And
Okay.
if people Google it, they will come, but they're just going to bounce because it's top of funnel. They can't meet the user need. And so I think there's like, it's like, it might work. And if you're like, hey, that's where our product is going, I think you could make arguments like, hey, let's lay the foundation. Let's be ready when the engineering team catches up to the new meme coin for crypto.
Yeah.
Then we can like, we'll already have our landing page. We'll already be ranking top 5 because we've like built the internal links. Like, it's looking nice.
Do you think so I actually just had this conversation earlier today, removing the company for privacy, where they had a competitor who had like maybe a tight 1,000 pages, and they had found a very top funnel, like it sort of connects to the company and the business, but really doesn't convert very well, like 30,000 more pages. And one of the things, I haven't tested this in a while, but I'm curious your like up-to-date opinion on it, of like, there's got to be something to just rolling out a ton of pages that have moderate value, if that could weigh on your most valuable pages in terms of like link equity, dilution,
build some topical authority.
Yeah, those like, it seems I've seen in the past, and maybe it has more to do with link architecture than just it's on the site. If you publish a ton of site pages, and you see those rank, but then it seems like the top ranking pages also see a little bit of a drag of those pages going live. If that makes sense. I don't know. I haven't done that test recently, but
I think for sure is like I feel like it's a classic example of like good SEO to like go do that and get it right. And then like, hey, for these users, we're going to try to nurture them into be customers someday, but we don't expect them to become customers maybe ever, but we're going to try. But it is going to help our core business. Like, if you're like, we're talking about Descript because that's what we're on right now. Like if Descript is trying to sell podcasting software and they make a page for like the best, content and conversions episodes, right? They pick their best 3. They could probably do that programmatically for every podcast ever made.
Yes.
Best Joe Rogan, best whatever. Are they ever going to get a conversion for that when someone Googles like best content and conversion episodes? No. No listeners are going to download Descript.
Very few, yeah.
It's going to be really small, but it might help them become topically relevant for podcasting software or podcasts in general, just because it's like, is that a good example for what you're describing?
Maybe I miscommunicated it. What I'm saying is that a bad idea? Because that could be weighing on their ability to rank for like podcast software. Because
like it would take away from their ability?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Know if you've seen that.
No, I would say like it needs to be relevant in some way. I don't think it would take the way I think it would take away from it is if it gave you a bunch of negative signals. Like if it was all low quality content, if it's just the stuff that Google's trying to toss out of the algorithm altogether, like don't build it. Make good pages that have good click scores and have good like high usefulness ratings, right?
Right, yeah.
So if we're getting into like useless content, then don't do it. But if it's solving a user problem and it's adjacent to your industry, I would say it's on the backlog of ideas. It's not a no-brainer like the first couple examples we're talking about.
Makes sense.
Like, just ship it tomorrow. but I think it can be an option.
That makes sense.
And that's an interesting one because podcasts, like, well, how many podcasts are there really? Like, are there 500 or 1,000? I don't even know that are actually popular. Like, not that many. Yeah. So you could probably do it editorially and save your engineering time. You might not, but that's a whole nother discussion. Yeah. But it's like I think it's on the backlog for like, what should we ship next?
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. So, I mean, a connection to programmatic, kind of slightly changing the subject, but still being programmatic, is something I've seen in discussion with a few potential clients. I think one we might even have potentially shared at some point of when programmatic is the right approach, when you as the founder looking at these solutions could Google the term and then see on the SERP that it's all editorial, it's all blog posts. But for whatever reason, they have the idea of rolling out thousands of pages for this term. Even if you're seeing a ton of blog posts on the SERP, is programmatic the right approach, or what's your decision tree for thinking through that?
Um, I think it can be the right approach. My first question is, well, if everybody else is doing it with a writer, like competing for these with editorial,
Uh-huh.
is there really enough pages for us to need to get an engineer
Make it
involved, right? It's like, so if it's, if it's only 500 articles that we have to write, that's attainable. It's expensive, but it's attainable. If it's 50,000, now we probably won't ever write them all.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's like step one, is like, should we do it with content or not? Should we do it with editorial or not? If it's like, there's super long tail, we would never write that, it's going to get 12 visits a month. Then it's starting to be like, okay, programmatic's on the table. Let's think about it. I do, to answer directly your question, after you've gotten past that stage, then you're looking at the SERP and you're like, can it be done? I think you can, but I think you have to be very confident that your database and your design can support the user need enough so that were you to get a bunch of traffic, that traffic isn't just bailing out and going to one of the editorial pieces that you're competing against.
Makes sense. So you have to it has to be
really good.
It's a good click.
And it's hard to do programmatic so well.
Which you probably has to be productized, and your product has to be somehow novel in some way.
I think so.
Argue for that.
Yeah. I think so. So it's a lot easier to make a very good, bespoke page for a user with an editor and an expert writing it specifically for that query.
Yeah.
If you start doing it with templates, it's like, wow, that database better be robust.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's great. That's great advice. Makes sense. You really just, at the end of the day, got to think through if it's a good application or not against the rest. But so we talked about theoretically, if you're product led, you don't even got to have a hesitation rolling out pages. So maybe this answers this question, but is there any ideal rollout strategy when you're doing 40,000 pages? Is there risk of just hitting publish and go? What is that? Is there playbooks for getting index faster? Things like that?
My general recommendation to people is look at how many pages you're getting crawled each day and don't expect it to go up by very much. And then see how long it's going to take for all these pages to get indexed. The risk is if you publish 1 million pages, some of those pages are more valuable to you than others. Some of them are targeting more head terms than tail terms or whatever. And so you would prefer that those specific pages got indexed right away. If you give Google 1 million, you don't really have any control over which ones it crawls first. And so that's the biggest risk, is chuck 1 million pages at Google. It takes 100 days to crawl them all. And your best page in there with the biggest keyword volume gets crawled last. And you're like, no. So I would say stack rank them in order of like approximate keyword volume or value or users or however you're getting, like anything from your database that approximates that is great. Put them into and then slow roll them out based on how long it's taking to get indexed. But if you've got 2,000 pages, all at once is good.
Just let it go.
50,000 pages, starting to be questionable. 1 million, got to really think about it. If you're Zillow, that just doesn't matter because they get 30 million crawled a day.
It's kind of like a percentage of your data, your site size in some ways, right?
Yeah. I would say if you look at your daily crawl and you're getting crawled 1,000 a day, if we launch 10,000 pages tomorrow, we would expect them to all be crawled within a week or two. that's no problem. We can wait a week or two for our best page to get indexed,
Makes
like
sense.
batch if Google does them in the wrong order.
Nice.
And I don't know how long these loopholes are going to be open, but like Indexly and Tag Parrot and our like connect your Google Search Console and then they index you, and it sounds too good to be true, but it works. So they're using the. I'm probably going to close the loophole live on this show, but
The good thing about podcasts is you find the
no,
things 30 minutes in, hopefully will not. Yeah.
but like Tag Parrot, you just connect your Google Search Console and they read your XML files out of there, and they check which ones are indexed and which ones are not, and then they submit them to Google's
Tag parrot, you said.
live streaming API or whatever. There's an API where you can submit a URL to say like I'm live streaming, or you can submit a job opening. And then Google will quickly crawl that page and index it because it's kind of time sensitive, and they don't actually check if you're submitting those things. You can just submit. You can submit any page and it gets indexed. It's
pretty powerful.
I didn't know. I've been doing this for 15 years and I didn't know about these until like 3 months ago. So probably because I've been spoiled with like having big brands that don't
this
have
is the
problems.
clip that I want to be the social clip, but I know that will shut it down. So
no, we're not going to shut it down. It's, you know what?
It sounds valuable.
Give a freebie to the Google spam people. Sorry guys, I love you.
So how can this be done wrong? Have you seen programmatic just like fall on its face, or mistakes be made, or mistakes maybe you've made? I'm curious what comes top of mind there.
If you don't have a path to a best-in-class landing page, you shouldn't start. Usually that means programmatic all starts with a database that you can either have already or you can like make really huge fill new columns with content, fill new columns with images, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
If you've already got that and you think you can turn it into something that's great for users, that's going to compete with what's out there for the same query, then you're ready to go. But I've definitely seen folks just be like, we need programmatic, but the design is lacking, or it's V1 is going to be, a little bit sparse, but we're gonna fix it later. And then like the leadership moves on to their next pet project, and
it weighs the site down.
It just sits there as low quality content, dragging the site down. You wish you just never did the project. It took 6 months of your life. That's no fun. The other reason, I think we talked about a little bit, like if there's not enough long tail, then you probably shouldn't have done it. You probably should have just hired Siege to like write it for you. And
Makes
just
sense.
move on. Like find a big agency that can like
pump out good stuff quickly.
Like, be like, hey, we need 1,000 articles, and Siege is like, yeah, we can handle that. Like internally could never do that, and my engineers are going to take the same amount of time to make us a programmatic page. We probably shouldn't have done it.
And it's probably not. Some of those are connected to product, but not product led. Right.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So that seems like a reasonable connection.
And then I have one more actually, which is like on the poor engineering side. I don't know how you get there, but if you get to a point where there's so much tech debt that, or the engineering was so bad on the first rev that you can't really make updates quickly, it can be the sort of thing that gets everybody demoralized, and it would have been better to never do it in the first place. The example would be like you launch something and you like want to make changes to it, or you want to hire, I don't know, like Search Pilot to like do A/B testing for you. And it's like, well, it's not going to fit with we have too much tech debt. It's not going to fit with our back end or whatever. Like we're using whatever server side rendering already and they can't do, I don't know. Then it's really smart to like just get all that stuff dialed in up front. Like, are we ever going to want A/B testing? Okay, let's have the engineers talk to the Search Pilot guys so that we can actually connect that later. Yeah. Or like, hey, we think that we're going to hire a big team of content editors later, and we're going to want to layer in like a hybrid approach someday. Can we ever do that? And it's like, make sure it's built into the product plan for the programmatic pages. But if you don't get that, have those conversations up front, it can demoralize, and you might never even find success. And then they're like, hey, we're never going to do SEO again. That's like the worst.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I mean, that ties to my next question, which maybe you answered indirectly there, is just how do you maintain these things? Like, what does maintenance of programmatic
Yeah,
pages look like? How's
yeah.
that? What does that done well look like?
Well, I've never actually got to work with Search Pilot, unfortunately. For some of maybe
some
you
of
could
those
tell there's a little
reasons?
bit of like frustration in the background of that last sentence.
Yeah.
But I do think we did a lot of A/B testing at Zillow. Had a really nice like roll your own A/B testing program that was our own code to get it done. So if you're listening to this and you don't know A/B testing for programmatic, you split your URLs in half, right? You only have one user, so you can't use cookies. You show Google on half your template, like half the URLs from one template, you would show Google a certain version, and then the other half would stay the same as before. And then track it over time and see if you get to statistical significance to say, hey, that change helped us get more visits from SEO. And Search Pilot and a couple other competitors, but I'll shout out Will. So he can
seems like a good product.
Business. Great product. I've had like 4 demos from him over the years. I never actually purchased. I always feel guilty. Yeah. And that can be a really nice way to like keep momentum going on improving pages. If you have the ability to like do that, it can make it really easy to do maintenance because you're like
proving value,
constantly improving things, and you're like paying close attention to it, scrutiny. You almost always need some kind of SEO audit tool, whether like Ahrefs site audit is sufficient for most smallish sites. You can go to like Bright Edge or Conductor or SEO Clarity, or they'll do that for you. But I think as soon as you're doing programmatic with more than like 10,000 pages, you've got to upgrade to something that's like doing that for you. It makes it so much easier to find bugs, and they happen constantly. It's just a shocking thing how often bugs happen.
Yeah, makes sense.
That internal link just got deleted, and you're like, what?
Why? What reason?
Yeah, stuff, orphaned pages, etc.
I mean, you hit on a point that maybe isn't top of mind for a lot of people, but makes a ton of sense in hearing you explain it. Of like, programmatic done well instantly enables A/B testing. Like, you can A/B test these pages, and many SEOs might not even think about that. Like on editorial, it's very hard to do generally. If you're just like random, maybe it's possible on like it is maybe an SEO like software landing page for one page because it has enough visits, but baking that into that should be feasible for a lot of programmatic pages. So to not have that future looking thought process seems a little not like pretty big deal potentially. Yeah.
It's very cool. Like Etsy, I don't know. I think Etsy published their A/B testing engineering blog post like 2013, maybe. Like it's really old. It's not a new concept, but it is new that you can get something that's as like that your engineers can just like right out of the box, like have it the day after you publish your pages. And then of course you need traffic to come in order to do the A/B test, because otherwise you're never going to get statistical significance.
Yeah.
But if you roll out 10,000 pages tomorrow and 3 months from now you're getting traffic, you could split them in half and run an A/B test, which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
And just it's a superpower. As soon as you have the ability to do that, you can like actually tell your boss the thing you did was a good idea, instead of like SEOs we get a little hand wavy. Like sometimes it's like, it was the algorithm update, you know?
You can't prove anything.
It's really nice to be able to say, hey, we came up with an idea in our brainstorm 3 weeks ago and we just proved that it was a great idea. Good job, Jimmy.
Nice.
So
that's helpful for getting raises, promotions, all those good things.
It's really awesome. Yeah.
So it's probably a reason to do it for people no matter what.
Yeah.
So how about, we talked about super long tail and programmatic. Sometimes there's zero search data around these concepts, or you can't find them in keyword tools. What's your process for keyword research for programmatic?
It's the same as most things. Like, it's really nice when you see it in your tools and you can actually like prioritize it. So
yeah, it makes sense.
But I had a client the other day that were trying to optimize for workouts. So people search for like best upper body workouts for men. People also search for like best 30-minute upper body workouts for men. They also search for best 30-minute upper body workouts for men with dumbbells. Like, you can see how this gets really long tail really fast.
Yeah.
And then it'll just be like quad workouts, or like every muscle group, every whatever.
Every permutation.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty good opportunity for programmatic. But and so I wrote some scripts using ChatGPT to concatenate all of the terminology from all these different features into sentences
Uh-huh.
with the word best at the beginning or top at the beginning or whatever, like top workouts, blah blah. I think I got up to like 15 million keywords. And if you went through and read them all, they all make sense. And I put the first 100,000 through Ahrefs, and it was all I sorted them based on how, like approximately how long tail I thought they were.
Yeah.
And I put the first 100,000 of my 15 million through Ahrefs, and it was already at no data. And I was like, dang it, because my thought had been like, once we get it all the keyword data, we can back out and say like, which facets do we need to work on first? Is it upper body, lower body stuff? Is it actual muscle names like quads or glutes?
Right.
Is it
Yeah.
gender? Is it equipment? Blah, blah, blah. And we thankfully got the data we needed out of those first 100,000. But I was like, there is so much unknown in like the super long tail that it would have been really helpful. We're still going to build those. We're going to prioritize them in order approximately of what we thought, but we're going to build those pages for the extreme long tail for like best glute workouts using dumbbells at home or whatever, like really long tail. But Google said, or Ahrefs said 0 results on that one. But you can tell when you do the keyword research, like it's not 0, 0. And if we build a template, it's basically free to get them all.
Right.
So we might as well try it.
It's basically like if it, I mean, we use this in SaaS a ton for sales queries. Like people search the same across certain keyword sets. Like they're going to do a verse comparison search.
Yes.
Stuff like that.
You don't even need to do keyword research on verses anymore because you know someone's comparing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The only kind of like, which doesn't work at that scale you're talking about, but like, can I at least find Google suggest search for it? At least be a clue that someone's done this search.
Yeah. So Google suggest could be a really nice thing. You're like going to a client and you're like, hey, we should build this thing. How much keyword research? There's none. But when I type in the first 2 words, all the other ones show up in Google suggest. So someone's done it at some point.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's low, but we're building one template. We're going to use the database.
The incremental cost is not.
The incremental cost of getting 20 million landing pages versus 2 million landing pages is almost 0. So let's try it. And we're going to roll those out slowly because it's just too many pages to give to Google in a hurry.
Right.
And
makes sense.
Their brand can accommodate like 10,000 or 20,000 a week new pages. So we'll get there, but it's not like tomorrow. So we're
right. Because that's a newer startup kind of situation.
Your earlier question.
Yeah, like how fast should you do this? What's the right?
Because we got to prioritize because that super long tail one, we don't need Google to look at that yet. We've got some really high value ones earlier.
So at that kind of scale, and this ties into how I introed you about programmatic. It's maybe I'll ask you kind of a final thought question as well in case you have any other tips I forgot to ask. But obviously AI content, people are at least talking about it. There's data studies that are showing it's not performing. It's a natural application, hypothetically, to include it in programmatic AI written content. What's your thought process on it? Do you like it? Do you think it's bad? Like in the context of programmatic specifically? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad. Like Google has said, like they even changed their content guidelines to like not specifically ban it anymore.
Yeah,
right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
So, no, I think AI content is already getting abused, and I don't want, if you have a real brand and you want to protect it, I would be really careful. That said, there are some really great prompt engineers out there currently doing killer AI content at scale for programmatic where the users are very pleased with the outcome and it can be really useful. So,
do you know an example of that?
Is it Greg app? Have you heard of, is it Greg? Is that what it's called? The Greg app for plants? Let me double check this.
Yeah. As you look that up, and it makes sense even with a lot of like the database type stuff. I imagine a lot of those things are, even if it's not directly written by AI, like the speed of a lot of those things could be done so much faster using AI. even if the writing itself is not done with AI. So that's a valuable use case. But did you find the plan?
Yeah, it is greg.app.
Okay.
They are, if you go explore their site, they have guides to caring for plants. Like that's their main traffic driver, is just like how to care for that specific house plant you've got, or outside plant or whatever. And I listened to a podcast on Positional's Optimized podcast. You might know it, but they had one of the founder, I think, come on. His name's Alex, and he talked about it. And like the way that they're using AI is great. It's like we have a use case, the customer needs a thing explained to them. AI is really good at explaining things. It's not so good at giving opinions. And so like, and plants happen to be in an industry where it's like the way you care for a tulip hasn't changed in 300 years. Like certain amount of sun, certain amount of water, AI knows that. And so you can write prompts that will write creative AI paragraphs that answer the question. And then if you make a really good design for it, I think it's totally useful. I would say that's like the good end of AI.
Yeah.
They've scaled that nicely. And if you listen to that podcast, it's really, really interesting. And then the other end of it is like, I need a blog post describing the top 10 to-do apps. Hey, ChatGPT, go do it for me. It's like mostly hot garbage. Which is like why companies like yours are completely not afraid of this, I'm guessing. Because the value is still there of having a.
It's essentially repurposing all the editorial versions that have already done it without any kind of.
Yeah, it's really annoying.
Yeah.
But I do think the cream rises to the top in this kind of thing. I sure hope that we're not looking back 10 years and going, man, that was like the end of writers. That'd be so messed up. So it can be used for good or ill. So with programmatic, I think maybe that was where this is going. Like with the programmatic side, I think you have to do it in a way that honors the reader and uses, like, AI is great at making outlines for pages. So in a programmatic sense, I think that if you're like, hey, every page, we're going to build 10,000 pages and we're going to have AI write the outline.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then you could do a hybrid approach where like users get to fill in UGC on the rest. Like there's like ways to incorporate it that aren't. LinkedIn is kind of doing that a little bit with their expert story thing.
I think that got hit recently. I could be wrong.
Did it get hit already?
Yeah, I could be wrong.
Geez, that was quick.
They dominated for a second.
But like I think there's ways that you could use it. I have another client that's trying to compete for like they're trying to spin up thousands of AI tools, like generate tattoo.
Okay, yeah. I've seen that a lot.
And they've been really creative with the way that they're generating the supporting content and copy around their tattoo generator.
Okay.
And I think used responsibly, it's like a perfect use case. It's like we have lots and lots of landing pages. The focus is the product, but we need to write a unique title tag. We need to write image alt tags. We need to write like a paragraph of like what to click on the page. Perfect use case for AI and really nice for programmatic.
Yeah, my one sentence on that has been good AI use is when you give it something best in class and then tell it to go do something with it. So in that case, hopefully the product is the best in class thing and you're describing that product probably indirectly, and you can still argue for being the best thing because hopefully the product is not. Obviously, it's a longer conversation about AA products or a little commoditized and stuff, but hopefully it's a great product. Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that if the content is the product, then it needs to be very, very, very much written by an expert.
Yeah.
Or at least someone who's good at researching and writing.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
If the AI can support a product when it's just backing data.
For sure. For sure. You triggered another question on, do you, and just in case you don't have anything, like no pressure or anything, but curious if you can think of any great programmatic examples that are worth looking at that you've seen. You pulled one out of your hat.
The Greg.app.
Yeah. I can think about that too.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Run Repeat.
Oh yeah, they're great site. Yeah,
super sweet. but they're not new. They've been around for years.
Probably still crushing it. I haven't checked in them in a while.
I think they're doing pretty well.
And that's running shoe reviews for people who are not familiar.
Yep. Who else is killing programmatic right now? So it's hard to programmatic is weird. Like, it's such a big investment and engineering time is so scarce that I don't feel like you see a brand new programmatic strategy like spinning up all the time that makes the news. So I think that might be my two off the top.
Interesting.
Of my head.
Yeah, makes sense. If you think of any other, we'll add them to the show notes.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, anything I didn't, I mean, this has been great, Matt. Anything I didn't cover or tips or anything you'd share with people on programmatic or things, tools, whatever?
I think I gave you my tag parrot tool for getting indexed. No, I mean, it's just like first principles, like make something really good for the users. If you can do it with content, if you have to do it with content, great. If you can do it with programmatic, it can really be leveraged. But if you don't think it's going to end up in a situation where you think it is the best result, you should not even bite it off because it's never going to work. It's just too hard.
Yeah. I mean, several of the tips that I took away from this conversation, one was the laddering of rollout of the high search volume things makes a ton of sense to me. I like that approach. And then it's a no-brainer if it's product led. Like, don't have hesitation, do it 100% of the time, and don't worry. It says use the edge cases, which probably fall back on is this truly the best thing that is probably going to put people at risk and maybe is not the best application programmatic. Yeah. And using Jasper to just like answer 400 blog posts is not programmatic.
It is decidedly
That's how to lose.
No, that's a great way to flame out. Jasper's a cool product.
Yeah,
you have to use it responsibly.
Yeah,
use it responsibly.
Yeah,
like I tell every editorial team that I work with, it's like AI is your friend. Like you are going to be able to do things faster.
Yeah.
Like write your own outline and ask it what you missed. Write your article and ask it to use your editorial values to rewrite it or like to tell you what's wrong with it. Like these are really good uses of AI. Jasper's good at those things. Asking it to like do 400 FAQs and just go might work for a minute. I think
you made me realize I should have even asked. I think it's anytime you put text on the page, ask it to give you feedback on that. Like I could have asked it. I probably should have asked it. Maybe I should do it after this just to see what it would have said. What questions should I have asked you? Or what is problematic about these questions? But I didn't do it with like even like tweets and LinkedIn posts. I'm not changing my voice or anything, but sometimes I've been realizing, I'm like, why wasn't I doing this? Just asking for quick feedback on how to make this better. It's just such a no-brainer not to be afraid of. Well, Matt, this is great. I know you're not huge on social or blogging or anything, but if people want to stay connected to you, make sure you follow you on your podcast tour soon to come. Would be connect to you on LinkedIn. That'll be in the show notes.
Yeah, one of the funny things about being in-house is you just kind of like, it's very easy to isolate yourself. Like I didn't need a brand. I didn't need clients.
Yeah.
And then I emerged out of my shell and I was like, I don't know anybody.
Like, you need to do this.
I should go talk to some people.
Well, the good news, and I mean, I even think about this in my own career. I think, you've got it for people that are in-house, I think or that are agent side. It's of course powerful to have had those brands on your side. And of course you built the great case studies are hugely responsible for a lot of that. So that matters.
Some of it.
Not all of it.
Had some pretty killer teams. But, a lot of these teams were built before I got there.
But that helps. Say like if you aspire, like knock on wood, but conversations like this, I'm sure you're going to get mentioned more often. Like you can accelerate really fast because of the two brands you worked with, and that's going to happen.
I do greatly love those brands. They're fun to work with and stand in touch for sure. I appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, of course, man.
This is super fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
Cheers.